Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with 10 decks that get significantly better with the release of Theros in Pioneer. And we're going to be looking at cards that have the potential of going up as a result, as well as specifically cards out of Theros that I think might be undervalued based upon their performance in these Pioneer decks. So let's start off with Abzan Rally Aristocrats, I guess is what they're calling this deck. This is Return to Ranks version and Rally the Ancestors, so running both of them to get the combo of bringing all of your creatures back and then just having a 1-2 combo and then draining your opponent for lethal with cards like Zulaport Cutthroat and Cruel Celebrant. So we've seen this deck exist for a while. It does get hated out with like Leylines and Scavenging Oozes and whatnot. But the addition of Woe Strider does give some punch to this deck. We have seen these decks in the past use the Eldrazi that scries every time a creature dies, but you also have to have a sacrifice outlet in the 3-drop slot, and Woe Strider fits both of these bills, so it's a lot better of a card than like the Nantuko Husk. Yeah, the Nantuko can sacrifice everything and get +2/+2, but you're rarely ever attacking in with the Nantuko for lethal. So Woe Strider, having the ability to sacrifice creatures and scry one as well as get a goat token, is going to be very, very potent in this deck and is a huge upgrade to the Abzan Abzan Rally decks. So I think that Rally Ancestors is probably poised to start going up. Same thing with Return to the Ranks. They're both from sets that are old enough to where these type of archetypes have been around in their standard formats. We saw when Rally the Ancestors was legal in standard, it was one of the more dominant cards, and the card was able to go up to like $3, $4, $5, and I'm expecting the same thing in Pioneer, that the days of having Rally the Ancestors be a $2 rare are probably behind us, and it's going to start climbing to that $3, $4, $5 unless there's some sort of product that's going to reprint this. I would say the same thing with Return to the Ranks, other than I don't know if Return to the Ranks is as strong. This one is a 4-3 split, but really most of the decks that I do see run this sort of combo, they tend to be the opposite, that it's more focused on the Rally the Ancestors because the instant speed is crucial in some deck lists, or again in some matchups. So if we look over at the other cards in this deck, we have Stewardship Supplier that's already gone up incredibly high. This has this card sees play in a ton of different decks in Modern and Pioneer. And then we also have like Cruel Celebrant that I think is going to be a popular card in Commander for the long time. It is out of War of the Spark, so keep that in mind with Cruel Celebrant, as anything out of War of the Spark is going to be priced a little bit lower because of how much that set was opened. A few other ones that are notable that I think have the potential of going up is Zulaport Cutthroat. The thing is, this card gets reprinted a ton, but it does see a ton of play in Commander, and this glaring one, Voice of Resurgence, has started to go up, but this is a mythic out of a Modern Masters set as well as Dragon's Maze, and I think that this does have the potential of going back up again because there is really no value in Dragon's Maze. It wasn't opened at all, and there's still a lot of product rotting around for Dragon's Maze, so I think Voice of Resurgence could start to go up, and we're also starting to see this in other just Celestia beatdown decks in the format. So those are kind of my picks for this particular deck. With the Woe Strider, I think the Woe Strider is incredibly undervalued right now for a Theros card. I think that the 4 is probably the right price for it. So of course this isn't like a spec you're going to be making money on after fees, but if you want to buy your Woe Striders before they go up to that $4 mark and save a few bucks, or use them as trade value, I think that this is an incredibly underrated card for both Standard and Pioneer at the moment, based upon how much play it's seeing compared to its price. All right, so if we go on to the next deck, this is going to be a Mono Black Devotion. We saw this deck hit Standard first, and now it has hit Pioneer. This is the Pioneer version does get some better 2-drops. You do have Yarok and Timurit in the standard version of it, but you get Gifted Aetherborn, which is going to be the perfect roadblock card until you get your Devotion online. Other than that, it really is just the standard deck that exists right now with a Yara, Murderous Rider, Woe Strider. Again, there's some double dipping with this deck seeing multiple play, and the Nightmare Shepherd. So this is the Nightmare Shepherd adding a nice little 1-2 punch as well with Woe Strider if you have the combo out, and then curve into a Gary and a Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Then you can sacrifice everything to the Woe Strider and then get it back with the Nightmare Shepherd, and then sacrifice if they have any enter the battlefield triggers for a Yara, or you can just simply sacrifice a Grey Merchant after it comes out to the Woe Strider, and then it will re-trigger on the Devotion. What makes the Pioneer version, of course, much better than the standard version is you do have the Thoughtseize, which is the premier discard card in the format, probably ever printed. And we also have Fatal Push, which is slightly better than anything. Well, actually, it's more than slightly better. It's significantly better than anything we have in standard at the moment. We also do have the card draw engine with Underworld Connections, so that gives a nice little pairing to the Castle Locthwain for this deck to continue to draw cards. Life's probably not going to be an issue with the Yara and the Grey Merchant of Asphodel. I'm expecting this deck to continue to adjust. I think there might be better numbers here than this. Literally looks to me like someone had a standard deck and said, hey, let's try it out in Pioneer, and added some cards that were just kind of does in the mix. So cards that I am expecting to go up in this particular deck is, I think, Woe Strider, again, we mentioned it before, but Yarok's Finlurker is actually looking pretty decent. I'm pretty sure Yarok's Finlurker's foils, yeah, they are obscenely undervalued right now with how much they're seeing play in standard and in Pioneer. So at 88 cents, 90 cents a piece for foils, this is probably going to be a $3, $4, $5 foil. If this especially hits long term for Pioneer, you're never going to be able to get in on this price. However, even just the regular uncommons, I think you're fine to be picking up at a quarter. Remember, it's not something you're going to be trying to actually sell back on like TCG Player or eBay. This is if, say, Card Kingdom or Channel Fireball's buy list starts to offer more than you previously paid for them. That's actually how you make your money back. So again, this is one of these things about manage your collection rather than trying to make these, short-term profits with buying and selling online. All right, so the other cards in this particular deck that I think are, destined to go up. I don't know if Underworld Connections just had so many printing, but Castle Locthwain really looks like a card that's going to age very well. It sees play in basically every commander deck that can chuck it in. In black, it is a card that sees a ton of play throughout standard, and it's also seen play in modern and in Pioneer. It's very rare that we see a card that just triple, quadruple, even if we see this card possibly even see like legacy play, I think it's there because it's the drawback of Castle Locthwain is very low, especially it doesn't say basic swamp for coming to play untapped, so it works with fetch lands and the formats before that, and the payoff for Castle Locthwain is huge with being able to draw cards. It's my favorite card currently in standard. Whenever I'm trying to build a deck, I try to build around Castle Locthwain just because of how powerful the card is. So I think that another card too that now they mention in the sideboard that's going to get better and better as time goes on Pioneer is Leyline of Void. It's a card that didn't see that much play at the very first because we were riddled with like ramp strategies and Oath of Nissa strategies, and we didn't have a lot of good graveyard. This set just brought a huge graveyard aspect to it with the Elder Giants, and I think we're going to see more Leylines of the Void in sideboards. Some of the decks got a lot better. The Underworld Breach has spawned some decks in the format that we'll take a look at in a second, and Leyline is that much more of a necessary evil in sideboards that can run it. So this is another card that I think will rebound quite well for the Pioneer format. All right, so the next deck that gets significantly better is Blue White Control, and that has things to do with the, do I not have the right one? Yes, I do. The Thirst for Meaning. And this is particularly the combo with Dig Through Time. So Thirst for Meaning and Dig Through Time were just a match made in heaven, or a match made in hell if you don't like the card like I do, like Dig Through Time. But this card is going to fill up your graveyard and at instant speed, so you can hold up your counter spells, and then if they don't cast anything, you just Thirst for Meaning, throw some cards in the graveyard, and it's going to fuel those dig through times. Possibly we could see Treasure Cruise seeing play in these particular decks if they don't really care what they're digging for. And it's just one of the better cards that has been printed in a while for an instant speed draw card. We have a lot of them, but again, this is one at 3 mana, a lot of them are at 4. This is the most potent one in my opinion. So I think that the card that really gets better from this is just Dig Through Time. I am expecting Dig Through Time to be going up consistently in the Pioneer format until it eventually does get banned. And I'm calling it right now, Dig Through Time will need to get banned sometime in the format. It might be okay right now, but eventually we're going to have too many ways to fill up the graveyard, and Dig Through Time is going to be a card, like in every other format, that is just going to be too broken and have to go. So I'm going to give everyone a little bit of a pause here about trying to invest in Dig Through Time, because I think that is a huge liability. I don't know if you have time before you can actually make a good, decent profit before these things get banned. All right, so let's move on to a deck that did get significantly better, and this is Bogles. You can actually build this with a lot of different ways. I've actually seen some different Bogles lists in Pioneer because we have a Bogles list in Standard right now that is using more indestructible than and protection than it is using hexproof. But nonetheless, there is a standard version because we got some really good enchantments. The first one being Staggering Insight. So it's another card you can pair with Curious Obsession, and then you can basically have your hexproof creatures be able to both get bigger from the +1/+1 as well as draw you cards and continue to fill up your hand. So this one's actually going lower on the All That Glitters, which was one of the main reasons to be running the enchantments deck, that and Ethereal Armor, but this deck has preferred to go more of the draw. They also get the Sentinel's Mark. Sentinel's Mark gives Vigilance, which is pretty good for a hexproof deck because they can't attack you on the backswing. This is also this is Sentinel's Mark. I thought it was the one that was coming out of this one does give Vigilance as well. This is the one that was coming out of Guilds of Ravnica. I was thinking is the one that was able to get cards out of the graveyard. This one does make more sense because the ability to flash this in and give it +1/+2 in Vigilance, and if you cast on your main phase, it gets lifelink for a turn, which for Bogles is going to be the difference of stabilizing or not. So yeah, that's the big, I guess, addition for this would be Staggering Insight with the Curious Obsession. I'm not expecting many of these cards to, like, Basara Tower Archer is a card that I think is poised to go up eventually. Like right now, it's still staying pretty stagnant, pretty flat. But I'm expecting this one, especially the foils. There's another foil at 78 cents. That if Bogles does hit a home, if we start to see more results, this is a card you definitely could move on because Journey into Nyx is a set from a long time ago. It's definitely poised to start, increasing in value. Other things out of this particular one. Voice Resurgence, again, there's a little bit of an overlap of decks we've already seen. And any one of these uncommon enchantments in foil, if they're undervalued for sure, is something you can move on. All right, so the next deck that got significantly better, which is all the rage right now, is the Breach Lotus Storm. So this deck got a lot better because of Underworld Breach. We had some Lotus Storm decks before, but now it's a lot easier to get streamlined, and you don't have to use particular versions. Like this one's using Fae of Wishes to grab a win condition out of the sideboard, and the Vizier of the Tumbling Sands to untap your Lotus Field over and over. But I've seen other versions of the deck that are running other win conditions, and Thassa's Oracle. Most of them are running Thassa's Oracle now, but I've seen many versions that aren't running like Vizier of Tumbling Sands. They're running the Barrel and Goblin Electromancer, which has reduced the cost of things like Hidden Strings and Strategic Plannings. So this deck is, you're trying to establish a Lotus Field, and then you're just going to net up as much mana as you can, cast a bunch of spells, your library is going to be depleted, and then you cast a Thassa's Oracle, and you scry more than half your library away, and then you just instant win the game. So Thassa's Oracle is a card that is proven itself that it feels to me like the Laboratory Maniac. This can be a casual favorite. It also seems to be powerful enough for both Standard and Pioneer. $4 is probably right, though, because most decks don't want to run more than two. I've seen like one in the main, one in the side, two in the main before, just one in the main in various lists. The other cards, though, that do, of course, get better is who knows how far Lotus Field, a rare out of M20, could go. We saw other rares that saw a significant amount of play from M20 hit the $10 mark no problem. So Lotus Field could definitely go that way. It's still another card that's very popular in Commander. It's very abusable in Commander. A few other cards that are interesting here is like the Thespian Stage. This is a card that has been reprinted a bunch in the last year in the Commander set as well as what was in Ultimate Masters. However, this card is going to rebound regardless of how popular it is in this deck because of the popularity in Commander until it gets its inevitable reprint again. So this is the type of card I like to pick up low and sell high and then just wait for it to reprint and rinse and repeat over and over. Underworld Breach still seems to be pretty expensive, but in all honesty, it could have the potential of going up further than this. But the card that I like the most out of this particular deck is Chronic Flooding foils, because they are next to nothing. You can pick them up for bulk value. Chronic Flooding does seem to be in many of these decks as the win condition, as it's the best way just to self-mill and then be able to scry your library and win the game. So foils, bulk foils are, a common foil is about as rare as anything else. Well, not quite, but I mean, they're still quite rare in the scope of things, and the potential if people do foil out their deck is quite high for cards like Chronic Flooding. I did check the Card Kingdom's actually moved up on their regular buy list for this card. That's pretty crazy. I did check like TCG Player. There are a ton of copies, but they're all one-ofs at the 20 cents. So this is where you want to find, if you can actually find them in your, the garbage bin at your local game store or whatever, just pick them up. They're going to be worth a couple bucks in a few days. All right, so on to the next deck. This is the 4-color Awakening Ascendancy, which is also using the Underworld Breach. It makes Jeskai Ascendancy a lot better because then it gives all of your cards escape. So you can recast all those ops and attune with Aethers, and that sometimes is the difference between Jeskai Ascendancy going off or not. If you're not familiar with the combo, it's Sylvan Awakening. You turn a land into a creature, and then your land becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger through Jeskai Ascendancy until you swing in for lethal. You can do this as quick as turn 3. In the format of the deck is pretty resilient to like Thoughtseizes because you can top deck your way out of it, and everything is just about digging deeper. But of course there are some good matchups, bad matchups with this deck. It hasn't so far dominated the format, but this is something that's been around consistently since day one. Look at this again. Dig Through Time is in yet another deck. So I think that's 3 or 4 decks that we've come across already that have become a lot better because of the Theros inclusions like the Unreal Breach and whatnot. But other than that, I think Jeskai Ascendancy will continue its trend up. It's about $2 right now. So it's at the start of Pioneer, it was like a 50-cent rare. So it's quadrupled in value. I'm expecting that trend to continue. It is out of Concentar Kier, so out of fetch lands and whatnot. But yeah, rares out of that set could easily go $3, $4, $5. Sylvan Awakening also looks pretty good. This is just out of Domineering, another heavily open set. However, it is a card that currently goes for 50 cents, and if this does become a more mainstay in the Pioneer format, 50 cents is very low for a rare. Other than that, Sylvan Carotid, it's a card that continues to go up. If you haven't picked up your copies, it's probably too far. I think this card will probably get a reprint in some sort of Commander or supplemental product sometime soon. Same thing with Mana Confluence. We're seeing these in a lot of different deck lists. Okay, so next up we have a Mono White Walking Ballista. So this was the most talked about combo when Theros was spoiled with Walking Ballista and Gila Suncrowned going infinite. This one is also utilizing some other combos like Anafenza, the Kintry Spirit, which says whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you bolster one. Do they have a way they can infinitely get back Walking Ballista? Doesn't look like it. It's just another way to ramp up, I guess, on your Walking Ballista when it comes out. Yeah, and just the Devotion. I guess they're using Anafenza for the Devotion here to actually turn on Heliod. So this is a really Heliod-centric deck. It's actually using cards like Arcanist Owl for the Devotion to turn on Heliod, but this also does dig for the Walking Ballista. I thought about running some other cards in a deck like this to dig for Walking Ballista. There are plenty of ways to do it. There is a Naya deck that is using like Eldritch Evolution and ways to find other creatures. I've seen a Bant version that does it. But this one just tends to be like, okay, we're a mono white aggro / life gain. And so we can win just with aggressive and then eventually just threaten that Walking Ballista Heliod combo. Nykthos Shrine Nyx is in this particular deck. A lot of the cards though, like Walking Ballista and Heliod Suncrowned are very, very high. The cards that I would target if this deck does start to see a lot more play would be like the Anafenza Kintry Spirit. If it's one of the better Devotion to turn on Heliod, then I guess this is a worthwhile card to invest in. Pretty low, out of Dragons of Tarkir, pretty good pickup. All right, so on to the next deck, which is Niv to Light. This one had a phenomenal showing in one of the tournaments. It was basically dominated all the 4/1s. Nimazet Reborn gets a lot better because Euro Titan of Nature's Wrath is probably a better card to grab than like a Risen Reef or the Rogue. I can never think of this card, the Rogue Refiner out of Kaladesh. So gaining 3 life and then having a threat that can escape from the graveyard, especially if you're drawing a lot of cards and throwing a lot of cards in the graveyard through things like Traverses and Abrupt Decays and Utter Ends. One thing I want to point out is this is the third deck that I've also seen Solar Blaze in. So Solar Blaze doesn't tend to be that great in Standard at the moment because there's a lot of creatures with toughness that are greater than the power, and therefore it doesn't wipe them. Think of like a lot of the Cavaliers. or the Green Cavalier, for example. I've noticed that a lot of people prefer other board wipes in Standard, but in Pioneer it does seem to be a pretty good board wipe. Most of the creatures that you want dead are going to kill themselves off Solar Blaze by dealing damage to themselves. And this has been, this is the third deck we've come across so far, so it might be a little bit underrated at 35 cents. I don't know, though. Typically, they need to see a heavy play, not just one-ofs in decks. This one, of course, is better than other traditional board wipes because it has the two-color pairing for Niv Mizzet. So I don't think that this deck is going anywhere. It put up some phenomenal numbers. You can customize this deck to your desire. Really, it's Niv Mizzet and Bring to Light, and then other cards that work well with it. Most of the similarities, though, are Teferi is in this particular version almost 100% of the time as a 4-of. And then we do see at least a couple Abrupt Decays and whatnot. Other than that, though, it is pretty customizable. That's what it doesn't really have going for it, is every list is not going to be the same. And when looking at prices in any given format, when decks are carbon copy the same, like when Tron is exactly the same, that has a better job of having particular cards going up than not. But Niv Mizzet was a good call. We called this one about a month ago. We called Niv Mizzet, and it has increased in value a ton. And so the cards surrounding it are probably just a month, a week away before they start to go up as well. Bring to Light, of course, is the big one here. It is out of Zendikar, another set that was heavily open, but I think $1 is pretty low for a card this dominant. So Bring to Light would be a great pickup right now for the Niv Mizzet deck. Alrighty, so now we're on to the Black-Red Control. This is an archetype that's been around a while. Again, this is something you can customize. I've seen this with the Goblin Dark Dwellers. I've seen it with many other options you can run in the deck. Kalitas seems to be a mainstay, but the card gets a lot better, or the deck gets a lot better with Kroxa, Titans of Death's Hunger. I've tried this card out. It doesn't feel as strong as Euro because card draw is usually better than discard. And it is also the life is situational, where the life is never situational with Euro. You just gain 3 life. So Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger, coming back as a 6/6 for 4 mana, and then making your opponent discard another card is exactly what this Black-Red Control wants to. So you are just really trying to stall the game with cards like Gifted Aetherborn and Kalitas, and then all of these removal spells, and hopefully like Liliana Last Hope, Shonda Torch of Defiance, or your Kroxa Titans of Death's Hunger is going to be your win condition early. So I knew that Kroxa was the perfect glue for these type of strategies. I'm actually going to try it out in like an 8-rack wannabe discard type strategy in Pioneer because I have built those decks in the past and it was missing just some oomph, just something to push it, give it a late game finisher, and I think Kroxa is the perfect card. So I'm thinking that Kroxa could be a little bit underrated at $10 a piece. Other cards in this particular deck that are underrated, not really. These are pretty common cards in Pioneer, so I don't know if I'd be targeting any of them specifically, but Kroxa, Titans of Death's Hunger does seem like a great pickup at the moment. Last but not least is Bant Company. This is another one that gets better with Euro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. It's something that you can get out early just to dig and gain life. And this particular deck has cut the Teferis. They usually ran a full 4 package of Teferis just to stall to get to your collected companies. Now it looks like Euro is doing a better job, and then can also have the upside of being hit off the collected company. So here's another deck that has Voice of Resurgence. I think the Voice is the real deal in Pioneer. There's a lot of blue-eye control. There's a lot of mono black. Those are 2 matchups where I think Voice of Resurgence is very good against because of leaving back that body. And I'm liking these Bant Company decks and these like Celestia Shells and even like these white mid-range type decks. I think they're pretty well positioned in the Pioneer format. So Euro is going to give a lot of oomph to this. Coco's already pretty highly priced, but Coco's had no problem in Modern hitting $25 before. It could easily hit that mark again if Magic the Gathering as a whole decides to recover. Scavenging Ooze has been going up. That's another card that is included in most of these Coco decks. And Spellcaller is another card that is seeing a ton of play, which could be your next $15 rare in the format. So it's very close. Sorry, $12.50 for Spellquellers. Alrighty, so I guess that's my overview of how Theros have impacted Pioneer. I know this was a really long-winded, but hopefully the analysis was helpful to you. If I missed anything, be sure to comment in the comment section below. What cards are you specifically investing in for Pioneer, and how are you feeling about Theros? There's a lot of murmuring about how the set was bad, but I'm just not seeing it. I think a lot of these cards are pretty good. And yeah, I'm looking forward to brewing in the Pioneer format and actually continue to invest in the Pioneer format because it seems to have legs to it. Other formats are still suffering, like Commander and Modern, but Pioneer is going strong. And if we see a good tax season, I'm still predicting this is going to be the format that with the tax returns are going to see the biggest money that's being spent into completing those Pioneer decks. Anyway, this has been Kevin with the Rogue Market. Thanks for watching.